adventure in Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio, and I'm here with, man, this is going to be a good one because this is a show host on our network that talks about something that's not talked about a lot, and I know I've experienced it. I know you, the listeners, have probably experienced it, and now we're going to find out why Johnny hates sports with Fred Engh. How are you?
Good morning, Pipeman, and it's great to be with you this morning.
Oh, great to have you. And so tell me, let's start off right off the get-go. What was the impetus that made you come up with the concept of talking about why Johnny hates sports? What does that represent?
Well, the whole idea of, people have asked me after the fact of, I wrote the book, Why Johnny Hates Sports. And because of my background, I had 7 kids that played, and I saw all the things I didn't want to see happen out there. But the whole reason why Johnny hates sports is, what happens is kids are 6 years old. They hardly know how to tie their shoes, and yet we expect them to play like they play baseball or whatever in the major leagues. So that's what starts out with kids. And then all of a sudden, the league says, hey, we got to have somebody come out here to coach, and it's got to be you, Dad, because we don't have coaches. So here you got what I call Billy Jones's father, or Johnny Jones's father, or Mary, whatever's mother. And somebody's out there in the field trying to coach them. They may not have ever played this sport. They don't know anything about the sport at all, catching, throwing, kicking, hitting skills. So they're out there as a coach. So can you imagine the kid trying to be, having fun with somebody trying to show them to do that? And then the next thing that you have is you've got the league itself. And this league is made up of a group of guys who are plumbers, truck drivers, pharmacists. Who cares?
Oh, you mean they don't actually play in the sport that they're running?
No. So you got them out there, and they're organizing all of this. And so the main thing they say, well, what is our goal here? Well, what is every sport's goal? It's winning. And so get it back to the idea of kids starting out at 6 years old. And the statistics show, amazing, isn't it? They start at 6 years old, and by the age of 13, 70% of them will have quit. And when asked why they quit, they say that it ceased to be fun because of the pressure put on parents. Parents are out there screaming, yelling because they dropped a fly ball. I was doing an interview one time on TV in Tampa. Never forget it, right? Here's a guy in a hockey program. Kid's about 8, 9 years old, whatever, same thing. He misses a goal, and the camera catches him, and he's yelling and screaming. He says, "You bum, Billy, you can never do anything right." So I say, how would you like to be that age and your father calling you a bum because you missed a goal in a hockey?
Oh, and hockey is the worst out of all of them, because I coached a bunch of sports, but I coached hockey, and that was the worst, and like to your point, I played baseball for 9 years. By the time I got to high school, I was over it. And I wanted to go to the major leagues originally, but then it was just like, I was over it by then. But then in coaching, I noticed other coaches that like, how are they teaching these kids how to play baseball? They never played themselves. That's what ended up me coaching, because like I would have my kid on a team that the coach didn't even know what they were talking about or anything about the game.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is about, when I mentioned before that father gets out there and signs his kid up, and they say, well, the line's over here for you, he signed up to coach. He says, What? Are you kidding me? I'm not coaching. I got work to do, and I get home, and okay, well then next, because Billy, your son, can't play. What do you mean he can't play? Well, if we don't have a coach, then he can't play. We don't have a team. So there you go, and you got people out there doing it and trying to do it. But the worst part about it, I mean, you can be a baseball coach and just sit there in the dugout and watch what goes on. But that's not what happens. Now they get all excited, the score's 2-2, and now it's fifth or seventh inning, whatever. And now that everybody starts to get nervous, the people in the stands start yelling at the coach, put him in there, put him in there. And Scott's saying, wait a minute. And so it's just bedlam. And that's, like I say, 70% of the kids drop out, and that's evident of why, it's such a bad situation for so many kids.
Yeah. And it's a bad situation for the parents too, I find, for multiple reasons. You tell me what your opinion is, but number one, because, they first of all, they don't know what they're doing. So if there's parents that are seeing their kids that could have potential that aren't being taught the right way, and how those parents react to those coaches, or you have, like the typical coach, happens a lot in hockey, where, they think their kid should play all the time and they're a bully. And so ergo, they're going to bully the coach, and, all the things that go on that these kids have to see. Now, it's bad enough that, they're put under pressure to, play like they're professionals instead of in a rec league. But now they're seeing their parents act ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned they're playing in a rec league, and what is in the last several years is coming along is the travel teams. And so what happens with the travel teams, it's really, really hurting the rec programs. You got kids in communities, no matter where you live in the country, there's parks and rec departments, and they've got fields all over town, Northwest Park, Southwest Park, East, whatever. And on those parks, they got ball fields that they built with the idea that kids would play baseball. Well, the rec department doesn't organize it. They allow the permits for Billy Jones's father and whoever come in and say, hey, we got to have a baseball program for our kids. And that's how it starts. So you got the tune of millions of kids across the country that are now playing in rec programs. And then in the last few years, what happens is they go in to try to get a permit and say, sorry that it's not available. What do you mean it's not available? Well, we have travel teams that have paid money to lease the field. And so the travel teams, they appeal to the parents' ego, and they say, yeah, look, if you sign up, who's doing this? This is a code, or excuse me, the organizer of the travel team who's getting paid, and the coaches are getting paid. And so they say to the parent, look, your kid doesn't sign up for this. I mean, he's a good ball player and he's going to make it in the major leagues, or he's going to get his college scholarship. So you don't want to miss out on this. You know how much these people are paying for a year for their kid to go out there and play and travel?
Oh, I'm sure the listeners don't know unless they're paying it, because it's a lot of money.
$15,000. I was telling somebody, one of the interviews the other day, we said, it must cost you about $5,000. And this lady laughed. She said, yeah, I wish it was $5,000. $15,000 we paid last year. I said, what for? Well, you go to the tournaments, you got to take the kids, you got to stay in a hotel, you got to pay the coaches, you got to pay everything. And the worst part about it is now these guys that are calling themselves professional coaches, they're saying, if your kid doesn't go out there and play all year long, and guess what happens? Just like you were talking before, you get to a certain age, you get burnt out and say, the hell with this, I'm out of here. And because it's just too much.
I find where we are too in Florida, it's even more prevalent because, like, I'm from New Jersey. And what was cool about in New Jersey when I was raising my kids is that they could play a different sport for different seasons because there was, you know, it only was certain seasons. Here, what I really didn't like is, oh, if you take a season off of this sport to go play another sport, well, you're not in the inn anymore. Like, you're not part of the clique anymore. It's like you can't miss one season or else you fall to the bottom of the heap.
Yeah, you know, the worst part of that whole deal is you got the kid that, you know, he's got friends and he's got other things that he may want to do, but he says to himself, I don't want to disappoint my parents because they're spending all this money, so I'll just stick with it and stay out there. I tell you a
Or the
story.
parents tell them that, right? Yeah, like the parents are like, no, you know, if you want to quit after the season, you can, but you have to stick with it no matter what. Or they don't even give the option of quitting after the season. It's like, nope, you need to do this. And I think kids want to try different sports too.
Yeah, you know, the funny thing with the show that I do, as you kind of well know, called Why Johnny Hates Sports, which a little promo here is on Friday morning at 11 a.m. for anybody that's listening here. But, you know, talking about it the other day, one of the shows that the woman was saying, yeah, we spent $15,000 for a year, you know. I said, well, why do you spend that money? They said, well, you know, my kid can get a scholarship. If they don't do this, they're not going to get a scholarship. I said, well, what if you just forgot about all that and started saving all that money? And
Right.
Because you're not going to be guaranteed to get a scholarship, but if you put the money aside, you'll have money for them to go to college. Because, you know, the statistics will show it's amazing the parents, even though they know this, they don't give a damn. They say, hey, he can make it. But less than 2% of any kid that goes out in a baseball program and signs a major league contract will ever play in the major leagues.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that
Yeah.
amazing? So, you know, some of the people that I've had on the show, a guy that actually you're going to have me back next week, he went through the whole process of that. And I asked him about it. I said, you know, your parents push you into that because of these? Oh, yeah, absolutely. They knew I was going to make it to the major leagues. And he signed a contract, played for the Cardinals in the minor leagues. And he said, I rode around a bus all around the Carolinas. The worst experience of my life. Never played a day in the major leagues.
Wow. Wow. And then, you know, you were talking about parents before. Like, I was at one of my grandson's football games, a tournament, one of those tournaments. And this guy brought his kid into the bathroom, and the whole place could hear him screaming at the kid, like, and just totally belittling the kid because maybe he made a mistake in the game. You know?
Yeah, you talk about hockey. Hockey and football are the two worst for kids in sports. I'll tell you a quick story. But mother was telling me one time in one of the talks I was giving somewhere. She came up afterwards and she said, I got to tell you what happened to my son in the football program. He was going to go to a dental appointment, and I had to go to practice and pick him up. And I got there, and when I got there, I couldn't find him. And I went over to the coach. I said, where's my son? He said, he's over in the car over there. I said, I said, what's he doing in the car? She said, well, he's over there. She goes over, opens the door of the car, and this is in summer, and it's hot, and the car's running, the heat's turned on high, and he's wrapped in plastic wrap.
Oh, yeah, I know about that.
And see, so what happens is the league says, all right, now we got this real good quarterback, and he's got to weigh 115 pounds. If he weighs any more than that, they're going to have weigh-in tomorrow. You got to lose it. And then, Tommy, you got to get in there and lose all this weight. So he gets in there, and it's, heat exhaustion. I mean, the poor kid could die from that. And then the mother knew it, and she ended up suing the coach. So
Good for
people
her.
don't realize that. I mean, there's so many ugly, ugly stories about youth football coaches because, and I can say this because I was a head football coach in Wilmington, Delaware, in the high school. And so I know about football. And one thing is, football is a tough game for tough kids. And if you're not that, then you shouldn't be playing it. And
Yeah.
so many parents get their kids out there and they're going to be trying to play football, and they shouldn't even be out in the field because they don't want to be. They don't like to get hit. And
Yeah.
so it's just a rat race. But I'll tell you, the biggest fallacy of youth sports is called the maturing level. You got a kid that comes out, and let's say we get back to a 7-year-old. Well, maturation wise, there can be 4-year difference between that age group. So now you got a 7-year-old who managed to see that kid is 12 years old or what? He's not 7 years old. Well, he is because he matured early. So now you got him, and guess what the coach does? Oh man, that's good. Baseball, it's going to be my pitcher. Oh, football, it's going to be my quarterback, because they think of him as this big kid. So now you got the other 7-year-old who is the reverse, and now he can be a 7-year-old and can be the body of a 4-year-old. And so now you have those two, and the league doesn't care. How old are you, son? 7 years old. You're in this group, 7-year-olds. And so, you used to watch the Little League World Series, and you look at the kid on the mound, you say, what the hell is that kid? Is not 12 years old. He's 6'1", and I'm not kidding. You've probably seen it. The kid in the Little League World Series, 6'1", throwing a ball, 80 miles an hour. And how
my 10-year-old grandson is almost my size, height-wise, and he's definitely stockier than me. So in football, he goes through that. Like if he's in the 10U, then there's a bunch of kids that are like up to his knee and stomach size he's playing with.
And guess what the uncle and the parents and everybody else says, that's my boy out there, and look at it, he's big and he's going to dominate in this whole thing. And you never know what's in the kid's mind. I mean, he may be bigger and whatnot, but inside he's not, and he maybe doesn't even want to be out there. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to paint the picture that all youth sports are not good, because for the overwhelming majority, it's a great learning experience to develop self-confidence, self-esteem, self-worth, because you just develop that, not to even mention the physical benefits of starting out and learning how exercise, is important. So, like I say, I don't want to
keeps them out of trouble. It keeps them out of trouble too. Like if you don't have your kids in those kind of activities, they're going to be doing other activities that are much more dangerous.
Oh yeah, I live right across the street from a park here, in a big park, and every afternoon, Sundays, it's just packed with kids playing soccer. And I think, if they didn't have it, what are those kids going to be doing?
Yeah, they're probably going to be doing drugs and alcohol in that park.
Yeah, you got it. And so, that's the good part about with sports and what it does for kids. But we got to get rid of the ugly part, and we've been trying to do it with our organization for several years.
Yeah, tell everybody a little bit more about your organization, how they can reach out to you, how they can help, all that good stuff.
Yeah, the organization is the National Alliance for Youth Sports. I started the organization way back before the 2000. And what happened is based on all of that, I was saying that coaches need to be trained. And then started the organization. Would you believe today that throughout the country, 4 million plus coaches in communities across the country have gone through the program? And
Wow.
it's been conducted by local recreation professionals. So there are about 2,000 recreation departments that have a certified youth sport administrator who conducts training for parents and coaches and administrators of the program. So yeah, that has been going on, and it's a nonprofit organization that has just been helping educate, because that's the only thing you can do. You can educate people, and then in communities they make it mandatory. You're like the story in Jupiter a few years back that they decided they was going to make it mandatory that if you're a parent, you'd have to go through our parent program that teaches parents how to behave and the importance of what it means to kids. And the parent didn't go to the program, their kid couldn't play. So it caught
I like
national
that
news.
idea. I like that
Yeah,
idea.
it caught national news, and I was on everything from Good Morning America to ESPN or whatever. And people were saying, well, you can't do that to parents. They did it, and now many programs across the country do it. And it should be done so parents can come in and, sit there and say, you can't misbehave. This is about kids. It's not about you.
Exactly. I think it's a brilliant idea. And I think it should be required because too many parents don't know how to act. And that's what I was referring to before. The kids are seeing this, and like, I think of the kid that their parent is the one misbehaving, how embarrassing it is because then they have to go back to school with these kids they're playing with and play with them on the team. And, kids sometimes aren't nice to other kids, especially in those embarrassing situations.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, there's so many stories that people have told me over the years of, how the kids here. I've judged. I remember telling me one time is the judge in Alabama, and he said we were riding home in the car, and my son was riding in the back seat. My wife's next to me. He said my wife turns to him and just berates him the whole way home, telling him what he did wrong in the game, and he cost them to lose the game because of what he did. And he said that was my wife saying that, and so I say to people, it I don't care whether you're a psychologist, psychiatrist, a judge, or whoever it is. People are all the same, and they need to understand their words have such an impact on kids.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny because my oldest daughter, she was in gymnastics and stuff like gymnastics and cheerleading. Oh, man, those parents get serious.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I,
Right.
I, I say to people though, when we talk about parent behavior in sports, it's so different that the parent can be up in the stands and the kid strikes out and parent yells, "You dummy, why would you strike out?" I said, can you imagine the same thing happens in school and they're having a spelling bee and the parents are in the room watching the spelling bee and the kid misspells the word and the parent jumps up and yells, "How can you be so stupid, Sam? You
Right.
should know that. We've been working with you." Everybody in the room been looking, who is this idiot? But they don't do it in baseball. It's just part of it, and people will look, well, that's part of the game, the parents, but it's not anymore. I mean,
It shouldn't
well,
be a part of the game.
yeah,
So we're thankful that we have an organization like yours that can help the kids, the parents, the coaches, everybody. Uh, One last time before we go, give out all your information for your organization, how people can help, how they can contact you but also information on your show right here on W4CY Radio, Why Johnny Hates Sports. They can tune in every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And take it away, Fred.
Yeah, if you would think about doing it, it would be great, because the organization is NAYS.org. That's the National Alliance for Youth Sports. And all you'd have to do is say, click in there, NAYS.org, and just say, wow. And you'll see all the things that the organization does and how you can get involved in one way or another. And then, of course, as what Dean is saying, is every Friday morning at 11 a.m., I've been able to have some really interesting people, recreation people. And the last few weeks we talked about, travel teams, and as recreation people, what do they see in their communities about it. And then other people, had our Herb Kirk Street, who's ESPN, he's a broadcaster, and talking about kids in sports. And so people at different levels, sports psychologists, psychology, talking about all these important things. And, parents that are there and listeners that are listening to this, if you got kids, I think it's really important for you to hear what other people are saying, because then you can begin to look inside yourself to say, oh yeah, he's talking about me.
Yeah, right.
So
sometimes you do have to hear that outside voice.
Yeah, you got it. So it's Friday morning at 11 a.m. and we look forward to seeing you.
Well, thanks a lot for all you do, and your show is amazing. So everybody's got to tune in, or they can't listen to my show. And and it's same bat channel right here on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. And Fred, thank you for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
You got it, Dean, and I like seeing your Pipeman shows from time to time, talking about different categories.
Oh yeah, you never know what Pipeman personality is going to show up.
I hear you. Great being with you.
Ditto.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.